My name is Reverend James Stern. I'm a community activist, a licensed ordained minister, executive producer for Columbia Pictures, a film being produced there, and an author for Abundant Press. Being a minister, I realized that when I was at the age of 18 years old. Community activists came upon me because of events that happened in the community. The producer and author was a result of a series of events that I had no control over. I would say the most inspiration I had, other than my father, who was absolutely the biggest inspiration in my life growing up, as watching him as an Ethiopian Jewish man in my household. My pastor, Reverend Charles Mims, was my biggest inspiration. He got me out there to work with the community, to get hands-on. And I was born in an area that was so dangerous, so it was very challenging. I was born in Watts, California, which is a city in Los Angeles, which is the toughest ghetto area in Los Angeles, known for the home of the Bloods and Crips, the Watts riot in 1964. It was a very tough area to grow up in. Me being non-affiliated, non-gang related, I grew up as a geek who walked through the area, went to school. My parents sent me to private school, so when I got off the bus and came home, I lived two dual different worlds. I lived the world at school, which was private schools, rich kids, and then I came home to Watts, which was a ghetto area, which my parents was a landlord. So I lived a very sheltered and cautious life. I had to be very cautious because I wasn't affiliated and protected by the street gang, so I had to be careful everything I did. My biggest inspiration is probably my daughter, raising my daughter. To watch her grow and motivate, it motivates me to want to just continue going on, watching her succeed and flourish. Also, I like reading history. I'm a big history buff. I love history. Old Testament theology, history of African-American history. I'm a big sci-fi fan, so those are the things that motivate me. My life for Christ, I love it. I get up just motivated about life. Just breathing it makes me want to have more breath. Watching the sun, my daughter, once again, being a father is probably the most rewarding career you'll ever have. Watching your kids grow and motivating them and them motivating you, and you want them to succeed, so that's my biggest motivation. I would say the largest hardship was, the most traumatic one was bearing my own son. My son shot himself in the head as a result of me going to jail falsely, and when he found out that I was convicted of 25 years, he didn't realize I was going to be coming home in a few years on appeals. So he gave up and shot himself in the head. Second, probably equally as hard, was my mom died 5 months later of a heart attack when I got incarcerated. And I needed to make one phone call just to bury her in a grave that we already owned for her. The prison system in the state of Mississippi would not allow me to make one single phone call, so they held her body for 9 months and burned her body up and spread her ashes over a pauper's grave of 600 other people. And to this very day, I have an empty grave that I have to decide what to do with it, that she will never be in. Nothing tough. One day, heard a knock on my door early in the morning. It was the United States Secret Service, the United States Postal Inspector, the FBI, and the Moreno Valley Sheriff Department. And they arrested me for corporate wire fraud and identity theft. And I can only jump forward and say 2 weeks after being locked in the county jail, waiting for extradition to Mississippi, which initiated the warrant for my arrest, the United States Postal Inspector, the United States Secret Service, and FBI did their investigation. All unequivocally dropped their warrants against me and cleared me of all charges. Matter of fact, the Secret Service said they should join me in a lawsuit against Mississippi because they said they've never seen anything so corrupt in their life. But nevertheless, they couldn't drop another warrant from another jurisdiction. So I was in prison out here in California for 2 years, 6 months, just waiting to get shipped to Mississippi to face the charges. Even after filing a demand for speedy trial and cop-out pleas and everything else, I had to wait. While I was waiting, it was a tragic situation. I just sat here and life was going nowhere. Family life was naturally falling apart. Everything that I ever had in life was lost. Everything that I had going for myself was over with. And my future didn't look very promising because I was headed to a state that wanted to convict me of a life sentence. And true, when I got there 2 years, 6 months later, without a trial, The judge immediately gave me 25 years without any judicial process. Nothing constitutional happened to me in that state. That's how I eventually got out of jail, because everything they did to me was unconstitutional. While in prison in California, things was pretty by the book. California ran the prisons pretty tight, pretty fair. Didn't like being there, but it was ran fair. When I got to Mississippi, it was like going to a third world country. Didn't recognize anything about this country there. The race situation was unbelievably high. Blacks and whites just did not get along. They had their own version of what we call the Bloods and Crips. They had the Vice Lords and the Gangster Disciples. I was going back and forth to court, constantly fighting for my freedom. But one day back from court, the warden was there next to me and said, the sergeant asked me, did I know a man named Edgar Ray Killen? And I said, no. They said, have you ever heard of a man named Edgar Ray Killen? I said, no. They said, you sure you never heard of this man? I says, no. I said, is he gonna get me out of jail? And they laughed like it was the biggest joke they ever heard. And it's not good when the warden's standing next to you. Wardens don't stand next to inmates coming back from court unless it's trouble. She says, have you ever saw the movie Mississippi Burning? I said, I've heard of it, but at the time I've never seen it. She said, you've never seen that movie? I says, nope. The warden looks at me and says, he'll do. And I'm like, he'll do? So I'm walking back to my room after being checked in, and she says, congratulations. Sergeant Johnson said, you're now the roommate of Edgar Ray Killen. He's your new roommate. Well, it didn't mean much to me because I'm in Unit 31 in Parchman. Parchman, you would remember it from the movie Brubaker. Very, very tough prison. Very notorious for inmates coming up missing and dying. I didn't care about any inmate name because I was in there with the biggest pedophiles, rapists, murderers in the state of Mississippi. I was in a level 4 pen. So when I get back to my room, I'm literally unpacking my bags, my head's in my locker, and within a few minutes, a voice came behind me. It was an old voice, you could tell gruffly. It wasn't a young man. And he said, and I'm gonna have to use language that wasn't quite polite. He says, okay, nigga, what do you gotta bring me? And it caught my attention. I says, what? Did he just say that to me? You have to understand, in prison, there's a rule. Not an official rule, but an inmate rule. If a white man call a black man the N-word, we're instructed to turn around, hit first, and ask questions later. But there was something about the situation that I didn't feel right. I dared not touch the man. I just didn't even look. I didn't even know who was talking to me. I kept my head looking straight ahead. I ignored him. And a few seconds later, he says, nigga, do you hear me talking to you? And I said, okay. The words got to stinging a little. I says, he's gonna get enough of this N-word. And I'm trying to be nice. I look at my other roommate who's doing life without the possibility of parole, and we won't even go into what he's in there for. It's so hideous. He says, that's Edgar Ray Killen. Now, I'm tired of hearing the name at this time because it seems like every time you hear this man's name, the sky opens up, lightning flashes, and rainbows come out. So I just basically ignored it. And when I ignored him again, he says, nigga, you ain't gonna keep ignoring me. I said, okay, that's enough. I couldn't afford to let the black people keep hearing me, allowing this man to call me the N-word, because they would have chastised me. So when I turned around to deal with the problem, I says, oh my God. I saw an old man in a wheelchair. I mean, an old man, 80, 90 years old, in a wheelchair, literally. And I don't know about Mississippi, but in California, even in prison in California, we don't hit old people, and especially one in a wheelchair. It just don't happen. They can talk all they want, but you don't put your hand on those kind of people. So I didn't touch him. I smiled and looked at him. And I have to be honest with you, I think I made him madder. I know I made him madder because he turned so red and he was so upset. I made him more upset ignoring him than he was trying to give me those racial epithets. And I just literally smiled at him. And his teeth was rattling around in his mouth. They didn't fit. And I'm thinking, I could even knock your teeth out. I'm thinking to myself, I said, your teeth are already not working. And so I just ignored him. He turned around with his wheelchair and says, oh, you damn nigga, and he rolled away. And everybody from that point on warned me. They says, you should have done that. That's Edgar Ray Killen. They says, He gonna get you. I said, who in the heck is Edgar Ray Killer? They said, you don't know who he is? I said, no. I said, I really don't. And then I realized why they put me in a room with them. I was put in a room with the Imperial Wizard of the KKK because I was from California. See, in California, blacks and whites have a different relationship. If a black man and a white man don't like each other, it's only because one of them's an asshole. We have a real serious problem based on substance, not just because of your color. In Mississippi, because of the long history of racial strife, they still don't like each other based on color. So the warden figured that if Edgar Ray Killen, who was just convicted in 2005, it took him 45 years to convict this man, he's so powerful, they figured if he was in a cell with me, he stood a chance of living because the prison was 98% black. So he was going to have to be in a cell with somebody black. So on D-Zone, they put me with them. They knew that I was fighting for my freedom. They knew I was trying to go home. And they knew from here and reading my paperwork, they knew I was innocent. So they figured Stern's not going to touch this old man. You have to understand that I shared a cell with the Imperial Wizard of the KKK himself, Edgar Ray Killen, who had 4 million Klansmen under his control back in the 60s. He was the Green Reaper. He was the most powerful Klansman ever in the history of the Klan. He ruled with an iron fist. That's why they made the movie Mississippi Burning behind his administration, they would call it. He would tell me stories that would make me want to literally snap his neck. He would say stuff to me that was just so insulting that the average person would never put up with. But I've never, see, that's why he talked to me. I never comment. I never showed my disdain for him, my disgust. I just quietly looked at him and listened. So it took a lot of discipline to get to where I'm at now, to have all of his stories, his movie rights, his book rights, his powers of attorney. He even deeded over his 41 acres of property to me that I now own. I think the word leader, especially in the black community, is utilized in a way that shouldn't be utilized. We have enough of self-proclaimed leaders who don't deserve that title. And I don't plan on adding myself to that list of self-proclaimed. My pastor always taught me that if a man goes for a walk and nobody follows him, he's just a man going for a good walk. And you call yourself a leader, no one's following you, you're just a man going for a good walk. We have people who call themselves civil rights leaders, but they have done nothing in the past 50 years to do anything to actually put an end to the civil violations between the two races, which things could have been done. So I feel that I'm just doing my duty to God, to mankind, and to humanity. What I do is not for a title. What I do is because it's just something that needs to be done. Now, what people want to call me, some people call me a leader, some people call me a few other things. But it doesn't matter to me. Opinions are like, my father always said, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody got one, and they all stink. I can actually feel and taste an end to an era of racism. I see that we're so close to generations being born that will not have the dislike for each other based on your color of your skin, your shape, your size, and even gender. No matter what I agree with or disagree with, we have to put an end to those kind of discriminations. And I feel passionate because I see that we're actually able to do that now. We're at a generation that we can actually put some teeth into this fight and eradicate discrimination. First, I believe there's only one race. That's the human race. And I feel as long as we acknowledge the fact that we are just from one race, the human race, we'll be fine. Whether you are creative person of creation, believe in one man, Adam and Eve, we all come from one person, or whether you believe in evolution, coming from a slime or a one-cell amoeba, you still come from the same thing. You just evolve differently. So I believe my definition of fighting racism is going to be what I'm doing now. The first thing we must fight is the ones who are perpetrating racism, the evil people. I've personally targeted eradicating the KKK and the National Socialist Movement, which are two organizations here in this country which had all too long been given privileges that they don't deserve. The KKK is not even an organization. They are actually not even incorporated. They have no trademark, they have no articles of corporations, no DBA, no nothing. They've been around since 1865, operating illegally. So they, by definition, are a violent street gang. Also, they are domestic terrorists. They bomb churches, they've bombed cars, they've shot people, hung people, intimidated people, both whites and blacks. Most people didn't realize that the KKK hung as many white people as they did black people. So that's a domestic terrorist. They operate to put fear through violence, illegal violence, through the people. So getting rid of those groups is my goal. Whether I'm successful in all of my goals is irrelevant to me. It's the journey. It's the attempt. I tell people all the time, when they see me at a high point with a press conference or something going on, they only saw one flash picture of my life. There was a whole journey that led up to that point. And the journey gets me excited because it's so rewarding to watch every day people fight you, be against you. When people are against me, I love it because it shows me that I have more work to do. It makes me work harder. I get excited when I watch my haters become believers. People that actually did not believe in what I do or did, people just didn't like me just because I'm me. I have not always been a choir boy, Andy. I made my mistakes in my life, quite a few. And I have earned the distrust, and I've earned the anger that some people have for me. But to watch those people become believers and forgive me and join my bandwagon and try to bring hate to an end is rewarding. I believe in be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. The rest of that goes on to say, which is in Christ Jesus. I believe that the only way we can change is renew our minds. We all have a mindset. That mindset was motivated and encouraged by something. And if that mindset is leading us in the wrong direction, we need to be renewed and transformed by a different mindset. And I look at people who are racist. I've learned quite clearly from Edgar Ray Killen that racism is not something you're born with. It's something you're taught. There is not a white person who's a racist that was born that way. Majority of the white people in this country are not racist. There's a few and a large percentage that were taught racism, so they carry out what they were taught. There's a large percentage of black people who are racist. Racist is not exclusive to white people. I know some black people who are more racist than any white person can ever be. Jews, whites, Asians, no matter what. We all have a percentage of racists in our genders or in our cultural backgrounds. So no, I believe in just being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Whatever you're thinking today, you can be taught a different mindset. You remember, I went to prison with some of the hardest criminals, and I shared cells with them. Guys who were actually headed to death row. Guys who were actually just coming out of court, sentenced to death, waiting for that helicopter ride to San Quentin. I shared cells with a few of them in high power. And those guys had one thing going for themselves. They was about to have a long time to transform their minds. And many of them have transformed and become quite believers of Christ, religion, mankind, or just doing good. We know in this world people die every day, every second, every time we breathe, somebody's dying in this world. But their actions and what they've done lives on. So whether I personally, my face is on a billboard or a statue, irrelevant. No, that's not my goal. My actions, how I raised my daughter, I wanted to live on through her. She's going to carry on my works, my beliefs, my values, and she'll incorporate her own and become who she is, her own person. But I want to be remembered by my actions, what I teach. My name is Reverend James Stern, and this is my story.